I'm talking about people who worked for Donald Trump in his first administration. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about not just John Kelly, but Mark Milley, who was the Trump-appointed chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Who disobeyed Trump's direct orders on troop redeployments in Syria.
And I'm talking about the guy that had your job.
A massive violation of his constitutional oath, by the way.
I'm talking about the guy that had your job, Vice President Mike Pence. I'm talking about General Mattis, also Secretary of Defense in Trump's administration. I'm talking about Mark Esper, the Secretary of Defense, John Bolton, H.R. McMaster, Alyssa Farah Griffin.
Okay, Jake, are you going to listen to every Trump administration official? You know, one reason why Kamala Harris doesn't have as many people criticizing her is because she doesn't fire people who fail. That's why we haven't had a real audit of the disastrous Afghanistan withdrawal, is because Kamala Harris protects failures in government. Donald Trump fires them. And I'd much rather have the president who fires people who screw up. Now, Jake, no, this is an important point. Kamala Harris.
He did not fire Mike Pence.
Kamala Harris.
He did not fire Mark Milley.
Kamala Harris.
He did not fire John.
He fired a lot of those people, Jake, and he did because they weren't doing their job. But this is the thing, Jake. We've now spent 5 minutes talking about people in Donald Trump's staff
who think he's not fit for office.
He fired.
Who think he's not fit for office.
Oh, they didn't think he was unfit for office until they had a falling out with him because he fired them. And we're not talking about the public policy.
Well, we're actually
talk about how Americans can't afford groceries.
We're actually
Can we talk about the fact that Americans can't afford the cost of housing?
We're actually
Can we
talking
talk about the fact that a lot of people out there in Erie, Pennsylvania, they're the ones who suffer and die when people like Mark Esper and Mark Milley don't obey the commander-in-chief's orders.
We're talking about Donald Trump and what he said.
Yes.
And Donald Trump says...
And you'd much rather talk about what Donald Trump allegedly said than what Donald Trump did in office. What he did in office, Jake,
what he said publicly,
1.5% inflation.
The military to go after the enemy within, which is the American people.
He did not say that, Jake.
The enemy within?
He said that he was going to send the military after the American people. Show me the quote where he said
He said the enemy within.
He said far-left lunatics. He's talking about
the
people
Pelosi's
rioting.
And Schiff.
He's talking about people rioting after the election. I think
the Pelosi's were rioting after the election?
He said...
Adam Schiff was rioting after the election?
You're using two separate phrases. He said about using the military that far-left lunatics, people who riot in the wake of an election, people who burn down American cities in the summer of 2020, yes, we should have a federal law enforcement. But let's talk about who did he deliver this news to? To Jeffrey Goldberg, a guy who lied the United States into the Iraq War, which led to the deaths of millions of innocent Arabs and thousands of innocent Americans. You don't go to that guy if you don't have a particular ideological motive. I think that's what's going on. If I'm wrong, I'm happy to say that I'm wrong.
I think it's interesting that you think that a magazine writer lied the American people into war.
Well, he encouraged it. He wrote stories that were dishonest.
He wrote a story about the gassing of the Kurds in I forget if it was the Atlantic or the New Yorker, but I'm actually referring to John Kelly talking to the New York Times.
He wrote stories, by the way, where he took what intelligence officials in the American Pentagon bureaucracy said and wrote it as the gospel truth. And this highlights the entire point that I'm making about Trump's foreign policy, is this is a guy who wants to use American troops sparingly. He wants peace through strength. It's why his foreign policy was so successful during his first term. It's all the same people who were wrong about Iraq. They were wrong about the quagmire in Afghanistan. They were wrong about Syria. They were wrong about everything. And now they're coming after Donald Trump.